elders,
Today we are in front of the Australian Parliament
present
in
and
Canberra,
emerging. We would
Australia.
like to acknowledge everyone who has joined us here today.
We have joined the Myanmar party group for their protest
မြို့တော်လာရေး
against
နဲ့
the
ခေတ်
military
ဆက်ဆက်
coup d'etat
အာဏာရှင်
happened
စန
in
စ်စန့်ကျင်ရေး
February.
ဒီမိုကရေစီရေးလူ့ခွင့်ရေးတိုက်ပွဲအသီးသီးမှာအသက်ဆုံးလွန်သွားကြတဲ့ကျွန်တော်တိုင်းပြည်ရဲ့အာဇာနည်သူရကောင်းအပေါင်းကိုတမင်းနဲ့ငြိမ်သက်ပြီးတော့မိမိတို့ကိုယ်ကိုယ်ရဘာသာလိုက်ဆုတောင်းမေတ္တာပို့တာမဲ့အခမ်းအနားဖြစ်ပါခင်ဗျာကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်
Our next program is to honor our fallen heroes who were sacrificed for free Burma. So please give your 1 minute silence for our fallen hero band now. Thank you.
အားလုံးကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာခဏအစီအစဉ်လေးရတော့ CRPH NUG Spoke Australia ထုတ်ပြန်ကြေညာချက်ကိုဖတ်ကြားသွားမှာဖြစ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာအကြမ်းမဲ့သူကတော့ Deborah Team ဖြစ်ပါတယ်ခင်ဗျာ
Our next program is to take CRPH and UG support group Australia statement. For this program, to invite Mr. Sorry, I'm so sorry for that. Mrs. Deborah Tin. So please welcome Mrs. Deborah Tin.
Open letter. Dear Prime Minister, the Honorable Morrison, and Minister, the Honorable Senator Payne, we, the CRPH NUG Support Group Australia, on behalf of the Myanmar diaspora community in Australia, request that the Australian government formally recognize Myanmar's National Unity Government, NUG, as the rightful government of Myanmar, commence diplomatic relations with the NUG, and take steps to have the incumbent head and other diplomatic staff of the Canberra Myanmar Embassy recalled or their functions terminated based on the following. A. The National Unity Government is recognized by the international community at the highest level. On the 6th of December 2021, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution to delay a decision on who will represent Myanmar at the United Nations and determined that His Excellency Ambassador Jaw Motum will continue to represent Myanmar in the UN. B. We all notice the alarming escalation of grave human rights abuses, and we continue to call for the unconditional release of all those arbitrarily detained, including Myanmar's elected leaders, an end to the military junta's gross violations of human rights, for the regime to engage constructive dialogue with all parties, and for the restoration of democracy. The incumbent diplomats of the Myanmar Embassy in Canberra are representing the illegal Myanmar junta, and the junta is actually a terrorist group, and the diplomats are representative of the terrorist. This in itself is sufficient reason to have them recalled or their functions terminated. C. According to the ABC, Myanmar's embassy in Canberra recently sent documents listing the personal details and passport numbers of 70 Myanmar citizens, including several prominent civilian politicians and anti-junta dissidents, to the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade and other embassies in Canberra. They advised that the passports of these citizens had been declared null and void and should not be recognized if presented. This demonstrates two things. Firstly, that these diplomats represent the illegal military junta, and secondly, that the military junta is attempting to prevent the opposition, which is most of the population, from moving around the world to advocate for democracy or build up diplomatic support for the Myanmar's civilian government, the NUG. D. In the middle of this year, the embassy in Canberra sent letters to Myanmar government scholars in Australia demanding they pledge loyalty to the military junta in Myanmar and to declare they haven't been involved in the civil disobedience movement, one of the main arms of the nationwide opposition movement against military rule. The fear and concern felt by Myanmar government scholars in Australia was shared by the wider Myanmar student community, those on Australia Awards Scholarship, and even self-financed students, especially those who have been supporting the anti-coup movement. Liberal MP Dave Sharma rightly called the letter from the embassy gross interference in Australia's internal affairs. The conduct of these so-called diplomats clearly demonstrates that they do not represent the people of Myanmar. Instead, they represent the illegal military junta in its widespread, systematic campaign of violence against the population in order to overcome the opposition to their attempted coup. Also, in continuing to represent the illegal military junta, these diplomats are operating in complete opposition to and with complete disrespect for the principles on which our Australian Constitution is based, notably democracy and the rule of law, and the strong tradition of respect for the rights and freedoms of every individual in this country. The vast majority of the Myanmar diaspora in Australia opposes the illegal military junta and are bitterly disappointed that the ambassador has not defected from the junta, as other Myanmar officials have at overseas posts, despite its campaign of escalating violence against Myanmar civil society in Myanmar. The community of Myanmar students in Australia as a whole feels unsafe in response to the actions of the Canberra embassy. Therefore, as prominent Australian Chris Sidoti has rightly stated, the Australian government should formally recognize the NUG, National Unity Government, as the rightful government of Myanmar and expel the diplomats currently in the embassy. The National Unity Government has already appointed a representative to Australia. That representative should be considered the representative of the state of Myanmar in this country. Under Article 9 of the 1961 Vienna Treaty on Diplomatic Relations, the Australian government may at any time and without having to explain its decision, notify the sending state that the head of the mission or any member of the diplomatic staff of the mission is not acceptable, and have the representatives recalled or their functions terminated. Australia may also refuse to recognize the person concerned as a member of the mission if the sending state fails to recall or terminate the functions of the persons. On 7th of January 2022, Australia's Myanmar community will hold a protest in front of the Myanmar embassy in Canberra to call for Australia recognition of the NUG and its appointed representative in Australia, and for Australia to expel the current diplomatic staff in the Canberra embassy. We, the CRPH NUG Support Group Australia, representing the 72 civil society organizations from the Myanmar diaspora community in Australia, welcome any invitation to further discuss your response to this request. Thank you very much.
Bay máu.
Ok, chỉ dụ chụp đó. CRPH and UT spoke with a token of copy to it. Dobro, Gabriel Chingu, two way to the no? So, next season, not season to go out. You don't know those of you from the Ma, Oga Uo Chinua, people like a stone lago, Hajado Mapibare. Adi Ton Lago, Mimia no Awani, Haja Pima Pibare, Mimia no Shiu Chocolate.
The next program is to read a message from CRPH. The president of CRPH, Wang Jinu, sent us a speech to this public rally. So I would like to invite Ms. Lilian Ong, who is the member of CRPH and UT Support Group Victoria, to read a message from Wang Jinu. Please welcome Ms. Lilian Ong.
Thank you. 2022 ခုနှစ် ဇန်နဝါရီလ 9 ရက်နေ့တွင် CRPH and UG Support Group